This story takes place 27 years after the First Corporate War. The Nest by Sean Carrière. Chapter 32. As she stared at the oak doors at the front of the room, Mouse thought back to the night before. Mouse had been asleep in the back seat of the SUV and been awakened by the crash. She remembered Bobby saying he'd swerved to avoid hitting something he saw darting across the street. She then remembered the three of them having to take shelter inside the bank. The boss had sent her into the vault, ordering her to set up a sleeping area for the two of them. The little bomb maker had obeyed, carrying a backpack and 2 sleeping bags into the tiny metal room. As she unrolled the sleeping bags and laid them out, Mouse could hear the boss just outside the vault, chewing Bobby out for crashing their ride and stranding them deep inside the C-zone.
What the fuck, Bobby?
Danny Blue shouted angrily.
You had one job. Drive us. And you couldn't even do that.
Again, Bobby had tried to explain he'd seen something dart across the road ahead of them, but the boss wasn't in the mood for excuses. He just ordered him to fetch the remaining gear from his wrecked SUV. Back inside the vault, as Mouse took a battery-powered lantern and MREs out from her backpack, she could hear the boss activating their satellite radio. Once he established a link, he began barking orders to have a rescue team come get him out of the C-zone as soon as possible. As she listened, the little bomb maker dreaded having to spend the night with Danny Blue, even though she'd never refused him before. Not since that night back in her freshman year of college, when she'd first heard him speak at a recruitment rally on campus. Mouse heard the boss end the call, and she turned to look at the open door of the vault. There he stood, staring at her. They were both clad in their radiation suits, but the little bomb maker could feel her leader's eyes moving over her body as if she wore nothing.
You know what a man needs most after being locked up?
Danny said softly, his voice barely audible through their suits' helmets.
Don't you, Mouse?
The little bomb maker did know. Mouse stood up straight and faced the boss before unclipping her helmet and unzipping the front of her suit. Slowly, she took the helmet off and let it fall behind her. She then slipped her arms free, and the rest of the radiation suit fell open before hanging from around her waist. She then unbuttoned the denim shirt she'd worn under her suit as Danny Blue stepped into the vault. The two were soon standing face to face, barely a decimeter between them. Mouse's heart nearly jumped out of her chest when she felt the boss's gloved hands cupping and caressing her bare breasts.
Now take my radiation suit off,
Danny Blue said. Mouse had only begun to unclip the helmet of the boss's suit when they both heard Bobby outside the vault. He was screaming at the top of his lungs. The boss moved to look out the vault. Bobby was shutting the oak doors before awkwardly running toward them from across the bank. Mouse and the boss both stepped out of the vault and looked over the cash counter to see what Bobby was running from. At his heels were dozens of rats, each one as big as a raccoon. Without a word, the boss shoved Mouse back into the vault, and she stumbled onto the sleeping bag bed. When she looked back over her bare shoulder, the little bomb maker saw him closing the vault's massive steel door, locking the two of them inside. The last Mouse ever heard from Bobby were his desperate slaps against the vault's steel door, followed by the muffled sound of gunfire.